In this episode, I'm curious. I'm curious to know, is this latest and greatest 50mm f1.8 for my mirrorless Nikon system really much better than this old Nikon 50mm f1.8, which was made in 1978, and as it happens was the first lens I ever purchased when I was a teenager, just a few years ago. I can hear a woodpecker. Anyway, if the weather cooperates, there are two things that I want to do today. Two quick tests to satisfy my own curiosity and maybe yours too. I'm going to find something that's about 2 feet from the camera, maybe 3, and see how both lenses compare, picking up detail. Maybe some, I don't know, leaves or moss, or might be some wildflowers around. And the second test is to shoot something a bit wider, and this isn't the most photogenic forest, I must admit, but it doesn't matter, it's a test. I want to use midground and background and sort of be focusing, sort of include infinity, because I'm curious to know what the drop-off is in infinity. I'm thinking maybe sometimes these really good sharp lenses are too sharp, too clinical, and maybe a vintage lens is going to have a nicer sort of softer drop-off in infinity. I don't know, but let's find out. Somebody has been really busy. There are actually a lot of dead trees in this forest, and of course dead trees means lots of bugs and grubs, which means lots of woodpeckers, and there are probably about 3 just around me right now, busy looking for a mid-morning snack, and we may even pick it up in the audio. Of course, where there are woodpeckers and dead trees, there are also bears, and there is actually a bear that lives in this part of the forest, and I saw signs of it this morning when I first came in. Doesn't bother me much because I'm talking to myself, and that's probably going to scare it. I know it scares half of you lot. So I did bump into a woman that brings her dog here every morning for a walk, and she actually said they've just recently spotted a cougar, and she wasn't talking about her sister, so I got to keep my eyes peeled for that too. Just a big pussy cat, really, isn't it? Should have bought some snacks for it. Maybe I am the snack. I found this cluster of very nice, tiny little white flowers. So I'm going to start with the manual lens, and I'm going to be shooting at f11, f4, and f1.8. Even though this Z-mount 1.8 has a pinpoint focal feature, so I can zoom right in and with precision focus where I want to, I found that I couldn't do it in autofocus. I actually had to switch it all to manual to do it. Even then, it was just harder to use than the manual lens. The manual lens was so much easier. That surprises me. This composition I found is probably as good as it's going to get today. This is the most interesting part of the forest. Well, the sun's coming out. I mean, it's midday now. Not the best time to be shooting in an uninteresting location at the best of times. I do like this composition though, because it's great for a test shot. because there's contrast. There's lots of very light beige leaves which are a little bit reflective, and I'm not using a polarizer, so I'm going to get light bright areas there against the dark trees. So a bit of contrast. Contrast is where we get fringing, chromatic aberration, so that's good to check that. And yeah, I like it. I'm focusing about a third of the way in on this tree here, and that's going to give us focus all the way into affinity, all the way down that path, so we can check all of those trees and just see how that holds up when we compare the two lenses. I'm starting with the new lens, the Z mount, and of course, being autofocus and everything, this sort of shot is a no-brainer to do. With the manual lens, of course, I have to digitally zoom right in to where I want to focus and turn that little focus barrel, and it actually works surprisingly well. Apologies for the lack of lighting setup. I've got about an hour to do this before I have to go and do a client shoot. I filmed the outdoor segment there almost 2 months ago. I'm just way behind. I've been too busy, so I'll try not to rush. Deep breath. Okay, here we go. This is not a comprehensive test. In general, I have no interest in comparing lenses and sharpness and pixel peeping, and it's all nonsense. I need a really sharp lens for food photography and for product photography, but outside of that, something like landscape photography, honestly, any lens will do. That's how I feel about it. But having said that, I was really curious about my old vintage lens that I dug out of the cupboard after 30 years. For this first test, here's a composition I had for some wildflowers that I found. And we'll be zooming in on that shot. Now, the lighting was changing, so I tried to adjust the exposure to keep everything as similar as possible. We start with f11, the sweet spot for a lot of lenses, and here I cannot see any difference. They look exactly the same to me. f4 is typically the aperture I would use for this sort of shot, and here we can see both images again are identical. Both are great, they're sharp, and if I get really nitpicky, the bokeh is slightly softer on the newer lens, but barely noticeable. Now let's go wide at f1.8, something I probably wouldn't really do with this type of shot, but be interesting to see, right? Both of these images are in focus, but the new lens is a little sharper. It has a little bit more clarity to it. Now we can of course improve sharpness and clarity in Photoshop, but here I just left it as is so you can see the difference. With this tree image, I was looking at midground to background sharpness. I focused about a third of the way into the shot, and honestly, I cannot tell the difference. When I zoom right in, they look both exactly the same to me. So this little vintage lens from 1979 can be found online for as little as $60 or £50, whereas this new Z mount lens for the Nikon mirrorless system is $600 or about £520. So this lens costs 10 times as much and weighs 3 times as much as this little guy, which is hardly weighing anything. So is a new state-of-the-art lens better than a vintage lens? Well, in general, no, it's not. These lenses with the technology they've got in them are pretty amazing for things like action sports and wildlife where things are moving. The focus tracking can be amazing, but outside of that, in general, the image quality is no better. For landscape photography, these little old lenses are smaller, lighter, and most importantly, maybe, is the build quality is superb. This is all metal, it's made in Japan, and it's going to last forever. These cheap Chinese and Taiwanese lenses it's actually got a 10 on this, a recycle symbol with a 10. That's designated for recycling in 10 years. That's a joke. These are definitely worth looking at. And one final point, this is very important I think, is the photographic media and that includes YouTubers. YouTube channels are making their living from selling ads to these lens manufacturers that keep churning out these new products, or they're making money from commissions from affiliate links. So their information is probably going to be biased, don't you think? They want you to buy this new stuff so they can make a living doing their thing online. That's fair enough, but come on, should I have said that? Yeah, why not? I'm just going to tell it as I see it. That's as I see it. Here are a few more images that I shot with this little guy on my way home on that outing. Thank you for watching. See you again soon.